I am STE and I am a Salesian of Don Bosco. Over the past 10 weeks, you have been watching and journeying with me on my steps, on the RUAH of my steps. STE, me, steps. What is RUAH? We've gone through it many times. We've gone through it through different aspects of RUAH. I wanted to share my understanding of RUAH. And RUAH, first and foremost, is the breath of God, the Spirit of God running through my life, running through your life, running through the lives of those around us. It's God's Spirit within each and every single one of us. And how do we separate that out? We say RUAH, respect, understanding, affection, and humour. And as Salesians of Don Bosco wanted his Salesians to work with young people in their homes, in their schools, in their church, and most importantly, on the playground, in real life. So for us to be the presence of God for young people, we try to be the Spirit of God in school, through respecting our school, understanding our church community, having affection at home, showing our love and compassion with our friends and family at home, and being humorous on the playground, having fun. The point of these videos was to share my vocation story as I got closer to ordination as a Salesian priest, but more importantly was to share the spirit of Don Bosco in the 21st century in England, in the UK. What is it to be a Salesian, a young person inspired by Don Bosco's mission? I was born on the 15th of May 1994 in Liverpool, in Bootle actually, a little town of Liverpool, a beautiful little town of Liverpool. My parents, Margaret and Gary, my mum doesn't like being called Margaret, so we call her Margie, and my older sister Michelle, or Shelley, and my brother Andrew made up our family unit. And we lived together for many, many years. I went to the primary school, our local Catholic primary school of St. James's, where I also went to the parish church there. And the parish church is still to this day run by the Salesians of Don Bosco. That's where I first met the Salesians, without really knowing it. I was baptized by a Salesian, I made my first Holy Communion with Salesian priests, and then I went to the Salesian secondary school in Bootle, and that to me was Savio High School, but to people today it's the Salesian Academy of St. John Bosco, and for a few years ago it was the Savio Salesian College. There I started to understand a little bit more about Don Bosco. During time at that school as well, my niece Alicia was born in 2002 and my nephew Craig was born in 2005, and they really made our family what it is today. The presence of young people, and they kind of helped me understand why I loved working with young people. As I would take them to the park or I'd pick them up from nursery, they were a great source of joy for me, and they still are now. After I completed my studies at Savio High School, I did 2 years of sixth form, and then I didn't really want to go to university. So the Salesian community in the parish of St. James's suggested that I went to Savio House, and that's really where my vocation story begins. Savio House is our retreat centre in Macclesfield, and I lived with 7 Salesians and a group of lay people who are still today my really good friends. And I got to know the Salesian spirituality and the Salesian way of working by being at Savio House. During that time, I also started to understand God's calling for my life. So I decided to write a letter and ask if I could join the Salesians as first an aspirant and then a pre-novice in Bolton. And I went to Bolton and I worked for the first time in Thornley Salesian College as the assistant chaplain, with Sandy Fairley as the lay chaplain of the school. During that year, again, I got to understand how to work as a Salesian, but more importantly, I got to understand how to live as a Salesian with the other Salesian priests and brothers. A particular brother in memory is Brother Donald MacDonald, a great Salesian and a great inspiration for me. From there, I started to really understand that God was calling me to be a Salesian of Don Bosco. So I wrote my letter to join the novitiate, and Father Martin Coyle and his council accepted me, and they sent me to my novitiate in Los Angeles, California. One of the best years I have had as a Salesian. I lived with 11 other novices who are still my friends today. 2 of them are Salesian priests now, and the rest are still Salesian at heart in their own lives. After returning from the United States, I spent probably just on 6 years altogether in our formation house in Battersea. We'd just started a brand new community, and I was one of the first formees, students in formation. And I went to St. Mary's University to study a BA in Religious Studies and Theology, and then I continued on in St. Mary's to get a teacher's qualification to become a teacher in the UK. 2 years within there, I went back to Bolton as a teacher for my practical training year. They were 2 quite difficult years because it was COVID. It was the time of the pandemic. However, in that time, I got to again truly understand even more what it was like to be a Salesian working in the 21st century, working with lay staff and also working and caring for my brothers in community. A big Salesian presence in Bolton was really felt during the pandemic time. Reluctantly, I returned back to the formation community in London to complete my studies and my pontifical degree at the Mater Ecclesia College, where I studied for the STB to become a religious priest, a Salesian of Don Bosco who is a priest for Jesus Christ. And in 2022, I became a deacon. I was ordained a deacon, and I worked in our parish in London, the Sacred Heart, which is the mother church of our province, where Don Bosco sent the Salesians to work in Great Britain. And then in 2023, please God, I am ordained a Salesian priest. A priest for Jesus Christ, a priest for young people, working in the style of St. John Bosco.
Hello, I'm Theo, and one question that I have for brother, should I say Deacon Stephen now, is, who was your biggest inspiration as a child, and what made you exactly want to come into this world of the Salesians?
Wow, yeah, Theo, as always, you ask really good questions, even from year 7 right up to now in year 10. I've had a lot of inspirational people in my life, but yeah, it's a good question. But I think one inspirational person, and not to embarrass him because he is around somewhere, is a Salesian priest called Father Jerry, and actually he's involved in these different filmings. Because Father Jerry was my parish priest when I was in school, when I was your age. He was my school chaplain, but also my parish priest. And he, a bit like what Xander's just been saying about me, which was very nice, he was always there and always constant and always listening to what I had to say or needed to say, because it might surprise you, I wasn't a very good boy in school. I spent most of my time, especially science classes, outside the classroom. So Father Jerry was always there picking me up, asking me to do things, but always that joyful energy. And he's the one that taught me a lot about St. John Bosco. So probably without him, I wouldn't have been a Salesian. So if I was to really choose the inspirational person, it would be him.
Well, overall, in my nearly 4 years, only, Brother Stephen's always been there. He's been a really joyful person. One memory I do have of him is he took us to Savio House in year 7. And as we were driving along, I told him how long it was going to be, and he called me a talking clock.
My real privilege to be part of STE's journey for a really significant amount of time now, about 10 years. STE came here for his pre-novitiate year and volunteered with us, and then returned in 2019 and trained to be a teacher here. And the journey that he has been on and that we have been part of as a Salesian community has been really inspiring and has made a real difference to our whole school community. I know just from the impact that has had on my own children who were here at school. It's been really, really significant. So STE joined us as a pre-novitiate in 2013, and it's just been lovely to be with him in his maybe phase, I'm not sure phase, I think I'm going to do this phase, and now here in the I am doing this phase. This is who I am, this is who I am committing to for the rest of my life, and we're delighted that STE is going to come back and join us on our staff in September as Father STE Lloyd.
So I think he's a great individual to sort of spreading the faith in terms of the youth, which tends to be a bit more difficult audience in the modern day.
Yeah, I met Deacon Steve when I first started altar serving, and he was just really kind and made me feel really welcome. He's really a nice person, made me feel very welcome. Yeah.
So Steve has been with our parish for quite a long time, and one of the main aspects where he's been in my life was when he came to my school and taught me religious studies. At first it was quite a shock to see him there, but actually he was really a fun teacher, and he really helped the students to really deepen not only their faith but also to understand in a more practical way the stuff we were learning about in the religious studies.
Deacon Steve, you have been a shining star in our parish and a good guide to all the young people in our community. We wish you well, and you're lucky those who have you as a priest, they are going to be top marks. God bless you.
I really like Deacon Stephen. He's a person who I think really easy to talk to, and he has like a smile wherever he goes. So he's like a person I could, talk for hours, and I would actually really enjoy it. Also with Deacon Stephen, he really enjoys our Vietnamese food, so it's like another compliment, and I like him. He's just a really nice guy. I'm happy when I'm around him, and he inspires me to this day.
You just watch him sometime from the back, and he'd be kneeling there just praying. There's just something about him. Mm-hmm. My husband Tommy, he always said to me, Steve will become a Salesian priest. And I put this to Steve a few times, and Steve said, there's no way. Tommy's looking from heaven over him, over Steve, because he had a lot of time for Steve. Yeah. He knew how dedicated he was.
Excellent.
And when Steve called me one day and said to me, I've got something to tell you, I'm joining the Salesians. And my reaction was, I wish you'd have put £100 on a bet with Betfred, because Tommy would have won his bet.
Stephen was about five.
Yeah.
About five, so there was ourselves and Andrew, Shelley, his sister, and Danielle, Margie's niece.
Yeah.
And we jumped into the car, went to a caravan park in Wales, mid-Wales I think it was, wasn't it? And as we arrived, unpacking everything, putting stuff into the caravan. Started raining. It's quite a heavy storm.
Yeah.
And Andrew said,
where's Stephen? And we're like,
so we went, oh.
Huh? Where's Stephen?
So we all start panicking then, looking out, running around outside, running around in between all the caravans, and he just trotted up back around the corner.
Where have you been?
Screaming.
He's come round with the biggest smile on his face, and he's going, I've been looking round. He just wanted to explore.
Just went for a wander.
He just went for a wander, but how he found his way back, we were like, oh my God. Yeah.
I think the way he found his way back, I think he spotted the car.
Yeah.
He knew the car had come back that way.
and then he wanted to go back out again?
Yeah, so
And
his
Shelley had
sister
to
was
get out
trying
and
to.
look at
There's
the door,
actually
bring him back in.
pictures. There's pictures
You've got a
of him
photograph him as he came
standing
back.
there, soaking wet, the biggest smile on his face.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to go back out again in the rain, and his sister's like this, trying to keep him in.
Brother Steve, I knew him as a pupil at Savio Salesian College. It would be wrong to say he was a complete angel, but then who is? And I think that's very important. Steve was a young man who had his own views and opinions and his own ideas, which are, again, is very important. I think all through that time, because I saw him also in a parish context, he was also dedicated in his own way to helping to serve and helping to work with young people, and did a tremendous amount of work through the parish.
In 2014, Steve made an important decision to apply to become a novice, to go to the novitiate, and I, as provincial, accepted that application, and he spent a year in America, in California. Some people thought at age 20 he might be too young to make such a decision, but even though it's unusual at that age, it's not impossible, and it turned out to be the right decision. And over the years his vocation has been nurtured, supported and developed as part of the Salesian community, because that's where formation really happens and discernment really happens, with the support of his community, his family and his friends. Part of our vocation story is to trust the flow, and by this beautiful waterfall we see the flow of water, the Lord flowing his love into our hearts. And he asks us to listen. He asks us to listen to the noise of the real world, but he also asks us to listen to the silence of his voice that comes from the real world. For me, and part of my vocation journey, I walk a lot, and I walk to beautiful places like this, and I sit and I try to listen to the voice of God in my life. I try to listen to where he is directing me next. And my message to young people, to anybody thinking about a vocation to the religious life, to the priesthood, to the diaconate, to the Salesians of Don Bosco, is to really stop, look at the beauty of creation, look at the beauty that God has given us, and listen to God's voice. Listen to the silence. Listen to what God wants you to do in your life, because he's created you out of love. He's created you for love, and he's created you to be his loving servant.